Well, no, I've gone live because we're talking in evening, Patrick evening, Bruce evening to dear viewers in the comments already. And as Bruce said before we started, how very dare you turn up early, but nice of you to turn up early anyway. We are discussing the UK's dropping of, or not dropping. I said that I've said that incorrectly. They've kicked it down the road. They've kicked C ratings down the road for a little while. And potentially the UK will adopt its own standards, which, of course, manufacturers are going to clamour to comply with. They're going to line up to get their drones through the loopholes of operating in one tiny country. It's obvious.
These will be the GB ratings, will they?
Don't know.
Yeah, because that other rating that was GB, the other one that they've also pushed down the road.
I don't know. I've just seen GB on cars. You see a little oval sticker with GB on it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really bizarre. It really is, because we were aligned with the YASA regs, and we've been aligned with them, and that's what's been. And this is the bit gets me. We've been taught all the C rating stuff for the past 2 years. So if you dig your A2 CFC, everything you learnt is now poppycock for the most part, because a C2 aircraft comes along. We were all hoping to be able to do 5 meters takeoff, and landing and everything, because the aircraft's rated. DFT is now going, screw that. We're going to drop kick it down the road. I think it's 2026 they're looking at for us now. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of the YASA stuff I don't agree with. I never really did love the regs, because if you have, if DJI or Skydio or Autel bought out a drone that fell out of the sky every other flight, who here will buy it? None of us, apart from Bruce. So you wouldn't buy it. So drone standards on reliability were like a company doesn't want a failing product. Do you know what I mean? You don't want a car that breaks down every 5 minutes, do you? You won't buy it. In theory.
Yes.
So, anything with Lucas ignition.
Yeah. So yeah.
Showing your age now.
But all of a sudden, we've been told 2 months to go. Well, less than 2 months now to 2023. DFT's turned around and gone to the CAA, okay, C1 rating applies until then, and we'll just scribble some law, if they can get it done in time, of course. If they can get it scribbled in time, they're then going to scrap the C ratings as we know them, and you've just bought your Mavic 3 Classic that's C1 rated. You can fly it next to anyone, and all of a sudden, that's going to be whipped away from you in 2 months, or less than 2 months now. Who's going to know all this? Everything we've been taught, everything has been pushed for the last 2 years. You've been taught C1 aircraft. If you don't overfly people, you can fly it next to them. Now it's all just poppycock. We just don't know. It's crazy. But they're going to change. So they're looking to extend the transitional to 2026, as I understand it. The C1, what they're going to do is stick that at 500 grams, leave it where the transitional weight is, but ignore any aircraft that is C rated. So they just ignore the C rating and just say, do you know what? We like the 500 grams for no deliberate overflight. We like that. We're going to keep that. And then with your A2 CFC, you can do that. And then anything up to 2 kilos, 50 meters horizontal separation. We like that. So we're going to keep that bit. But your C ratings, your 1-to-1 ratio, all that, 2026, and we'll think about it. And what's the point? Because no company is going to build a drone for the UK market if it's different standards to one of the biggest markets in the world, which is the EU.
It's well, I suppose it to a certain degree it does highlight that it would be a good idea if there are to be standards and weights and letters and numbers and whatever else. Would be a good idea to harmonise them throughout the world. But that ain't never going to happen.
America doesn't have these C ratings or standards.
It'll have something, and Patrick will tell us there will be something in the cards, and everywhere at the moment is guilty of exceptionalism. Every country in the world seems to know best. Without actually looking at what's happening. What I will say is somebody from the CAA said to me that hundreds of thousands of drones are coming. It's the UK is going to be a market of hundreds of thousands of commercially operated drones. It's like, no, it's not. It's not, mate. It's not.
No,
No worry. No worry.
Well, the numbers don't add up. So let's say last year, I think it was about 6,000 PDRA 01 holders. So you got 6,000. Now, if we times that by 10, let's say there's 10 people working every 6, so 60,000 drones flying. That's peanuts, absolute peanuts compared to the rest of the EU's operate. We can make 60,000, and out of those 60,000 sales, is every company going to buy that one drone? Why would you? Because you buy different drones for different things. It makes no logical sense at all for the UK to ditch this. But the DFT and the government, anything to do with like EU standards, they want to shoot themselves in the foot and kind of walk away from it a bit, which could be detrimental.
It would be limp away. If you shot yourself in the foot, you'd limp away.
Yeah, you would.
Well, we are going to do a bit of limping. The only good thing, though, that I can work out is under the specific category, we don't have the flight termination system that YASA wants. And thank God for that, because that is just ridiculously daft and dangerous. I consider that kind of system is just bonkers. I just don't like it.
Here's the thought. Why don't we just adopt the rules for football? I mean, we've got Craft at Way roughly the same. We've got more control. Fewer people are injured. Football rules seem to work okay. Let's just use those. But these are toys we're talking about. These are just, even the commercial ones, unless you're talking about an M300 or something, we're talking about with a Mavic and with a Mavic Mini or whatever. These are little bits of plastic that go up in the sky. Why do we need such huge regulation and overreach? In fact, I was doing some research for my video, and this is like the car industry back in the late 1800s when everyone was so awfully scared of cars that they just tried to regulate them off the road. You got a man with a red flag. You got to shoot a gun. In fact, one of the ones I read was really interesting. They tried to pass a rule in America where if you were driving a horseless carriage on the road and a horse or other livestock approached, you had to disassemble your car and put it in the bushes until this livestock had passed, and then you could reassemble it and continue. That was a rule they tried to get passed, but it got knocked down. But that's the kind of lunacy we're facing now. The risks have been massively overstated. People are cowering in fear of drones because they're coming in lots of them. We just need a reality check. Time for a reality check.
Well, listen, it's funny, you guys are going down the logic rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It never ends well.
Yeah. Red mug. Red mug. Yeah.
It's crazy though. So here's what my brain still doesn't grasp at times. My Mavic Pro 2 that's over there, if I fly it with an A2C of C, it has to be 50 meters horizontal separation from uninvolved people. Yet with my PDRA 01, I can overfly houses, property, and people. What?
That's because it's poppycock.
Yeah, it has to be poppycock. There's no better word, to be honest, because it has to be poppycock.
Oh, I could think of a few. Good thing this is a family show, because I could. You got the bleed button handy. No, here's the problem. Okay, arbitrary and capricious. Okay, I was thinking more about this. People in forums and from other countries are like, it's 250 grams. I don't get it. Where, how did this and where? And then you can, and they're trying to make sense of the absurd. 250 grams, totally arbitrary. Came from that MOD explosion, shrapnel, likelihood of death. And the drone companies went along with it, and they went along with it because they were told, "Oh, it's only going to be for registration. You're good. Don't sweat it." Here, wink, wink, nod, nod, and Bob's your uncle, and all the rest of that. And that is not what happens. The FAA wanted everything, so it was a great victory. It was 250 grams. All of this stuff that you guys are talking about, and all of the stuff that we've been talking about for the last 20 years, is a bunch of Poppycock. I look back at the CAP 722 document. I know, Gary, you were there. Other people were looking at that stuff. At the time, the or CAA UK was very pragmatic. It was, come talk to us. What do you want to do? Now it's something that stifles innovation, economic security, and national security. And it's the same deal here in the United States. I was talking with Gene Robinson today. You remember Gene Robinson, everyone, I'm sure. And right now, the line is in the sand as far as I can see, that if we continue the same way, and when I say we, I'm going to say the West, if we continue with this same thing, we will also give away and forfeit the over 55 pounds. It's just the handwriting's on the wall. Everybody's making it, the Iranians, the Turks, Russians, everybody is making drones, and we're going to be sitting back here with no regulations, and you're going to have a rerun of what happened with the Chinese takeover of the whole drone system. And again, for me, it's an economic viability. Everybody talks about STEM. You got a pipeline that doesn't go anywhere. You know, where are the STEM jobs?
Well, here I am. Well, I think there's plenty of STEM jobs, but as a STEM teacher, I can't use drones to teach with because of the flipping regulations. Even in South Africa, I can't reasonably teach with them. And to be honest, what good does teaching with a small drone do anyway? But GMI, no, everyone needs RID. You don't just have to have a Part 107 to have RID. It's RID for all, isn't it, Patrick? There's no under one. There's no, if you're under 250 grams, there's no exemption for that. Is there?
If it has a camera on it, you got stipulations. And then even if you're not flying commercially, you got to take that family show. I can't use that word either. The trust test. And it just like you say. I mean, I had the same deal. I'm teaching kids and can't do this and can't do that, and I got to. It's the drug dealer talk, is like I like to talk. And I didn't come up with that. It's somebody else came up with that. But they're like, if you're going to do a commercial job and people want you to do everything, and then you got to kind of explain to them the nuances of what's legal and what's not.
You sure about that, Sean? I'm not sure about that.
No, he's right. In the US, under 250 grams of regret. But the crazy thing is that as of September next year, if you're flying under Part 107, you have to have remote ID on one of these. How are you going to fit a remote ID on one of those? Even the smallest one's going to weigh more than the drone. But if you're flying for commercial gain under Part 107, you will have to have remote ID fitted.
I'm astounded at how many people have only just caught on that anyone with an app can track you with RID. I'm astounded.
People
have been paying attention.
They're not paying attention, and as was stated earlier with the poppycock dissertation, is things are so convoluted and confusing and changing and shifting, and we got to have that. We're going to add this. We're going to do that. It is getting to the point where, I mean, it's like unless you're really like in the industry, I mean, who's going to keep up with that? You think the guy that goes to the electronics store and plunks down the money to buy a drone is going to like read up on all the rules? That's crazy talk. I don't know who thought that's going to happen, because you just can't. You're not going to be able to keep up on all of those rules and all of the changes. And I think they're excessive and over the top. Personally, there should be a home built RC model thing. We have home built here. You can fly around. You don't need to take a test or anything else. How come there's not a 51% RC model thing? Well, I'll tell you why, because we don't have any advocacy. It's weak. I mean, where we're at now, right? We're just talking about arbitrary and capricious and where all these numbers come up with and all this crap and what's that going to be on here and why do we need this? Remember, the registration thing was going to bring in that climate of responsibility that didn't materialize. We all knew it was going to materialize. Too much. Especially when you are talking about, I don't know how it is over there in Europe. I know it's big because I see it, but, this advanced air mobility and Navy. I mean, who are the people that are going to be working these jobs? Is it some guy that they pulled off of the Starbucks? Hey, come on in here. You're the new A&P switching batteries out.
Well,
training.
AAM that's also been kicked down the road. Really, all their forecasts are saying, well, actually, we're going to be everything was going to be certified next year, basically, wasn't it? To start with, a few years ago, 2023, we'll all be flying 23, and then it's become 2025, maybe 25, 26, 2026. We'll have it all squared away there, and there was a big jumping up and down and hurrahs for Joby because they. The FAA, want to talk about their registration or their certification requirements. And if you look at each heading, you don't even have to read the paragraph. Just look at the headings of each thing, and it's like, my word, that's going to take a long time. That's going to take a long time. That's going to take a long time. Yeah,
tons of money.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. But as I said before. There'll be a use case for big delivery trains. Now, earlier on, Bruce mentioned we've got to, all of this is about safe. Well, actually, I'll come back to one of these you said first. Now, earlier on, hello, I'm talking back to myself. How am I doing that?
I don't know. That's good. It's a good trick.
That was good. It must be leaving that from Mark. Yeah.
Maybe it was the candle.
It was the candle. So lucky not to have a candle today. I'm nervous.
We're getting you a smoking jacket for Christmas. You can sit there in the cravat, the smoking jacket.
Absolutely. But you were saying about the registration. See, that might have been all right if it came with education as well. Okay, it was supposed to, everywhere in the world it's supposed to come with education, but it hasn't. And if regulators came with continued safety training, safety advice, kept you in the loop. But what all this has done is made stuff go underground. A lot of stuff is completely underground and off the radar. And this is always going to bring in Bruce's point about we've got to keep the death toll down. I mean, horrendous mid-air accident in America last week. Horrendous accident, and that was in an Airbus situation, allegedly completely safe situation. That was a terrible indictment on the manned aviation community. Funny enough, a friend of mine was also killed in one of those P-38s, P-36s, whatever the Air Cobra is. Terrible, horrible aircraft. Chap called Guy Bancroft Wilson was asphyxiated, and he crashed at the Biggin Hill Air Show in one of those, actually. So terrible airplanes. They shouldn't be allowed in the sky anywhere. But
it's dangerous. That up here at the Reno Air Show a few years ago, we had an accident.
Yeah.
And I saw pictures from somebody that was there, and I mean the carnage. It was. I didn't see any of those on the internet. I'm sure they're out there, but from people that were there, just amazing. And I live down the street here. I don't know if you guys remember that. There was a Sabre jet went into an ice cream parlor. That was back in the 70s. That's right down the street, man. That was.
I saw that movie. That's the one with where they went underground and they thought a nuclear bomb had dropped.
Oh, I don't know about that, but all I know is the dude just went into the ice cream store. It was a big birthday party, and all the kids died. It was horrible. Jet A everywhere. Anyway.
Well, I did some research for the video that I'm working on, and I did a Google News search just for the last 12 months, and I found 10 mid-air collisions involving death.
Wasn't
for
there
the last year? Yeah.
Wasn't there a Dallas one last week?
Yeah, that's that one Gary was talking
that's
about.
That
one's really
mentioning. Yeah.
I have to be honest. I haven't even delved into that one because I saw some of the video on Twitter and I was just like, whoa. But
they just overflown a parking lot somewhere too, so it wasn't just all over the airfield. They overflown a built-up area at that time.
Exactly, and by the grace of God, they collided.
Well, not by the grace of God. That was a really good example of the Swiss cheese model. Where all the holes line up and eventually something's going to happen. There were so many moving parts that went wrong. The Airbus told the guy with a a renowned poor visibility from the cockpit aircraft to take the lead, and so he accelerated away, and they didn't separate them by height. They didn't have the fighters all, because they had two orbits, one for the large aircraft and one for the short, happening within each other. They didn't separate them by height. They didn't separate the speeds. It was horrendous. So that's, that would be, well, unfortunately, as the things grow, we have had accidents, deaths in model aviation. We can't deny that. But that would be our like 30-year quota. That one. No, it's terrible.
Speaking about that, it's supposed to be this education and this training and all the sort of stuff that the regulators were going to provide. Well, the reality is that they don't know as much as us. And as I say, this is coming up in a video I'm doing. We've proven over many decades we understand it all. We've been responsibly self-policing and acting in a way that keeps the safety very high and the risks very low. And now the regulators are coming in and believe they can improve on that from a position of ignorance.
I'd go one further on that, Bruce, and I think you're correct. And there also used to be more of a community in the RC world, where people would work together, and you could go and get mentored or talk to people, or go to the hobby shop, and the guy behind the counter would reel you in and say, don't buy the Turbine because you probably can't buy that. Here's the Otter, or whatever, which has also been eroded by the regulations. I think it's been detrimental to that culture of safety, even in the model aviation thing, and then as a stepping stone into manned aviation. So that's an issue. The other thing I'd like to touch on is, the only way the registration and education thing was going to work was with point of sale registration. But the big box store said, we don't want that. And of course they don't want that. You're plunking down your credit card, you're going to buy your $2,000 drone, and they're like, okay, you got to look at these rules here, sign off on that, register, and you're going to be like, we're going to go get the kid the gun because this is too complicated. You can't use it anywhere. So we'll go do that.
Just quickly go to this comment from Gimbal Air, later remote ID thing, not bothered to read what's happening outside the airport. What's an issue if you're flying legally whenever you aren't fair cop? Well, sort of yes and no to that piece, in that, I suppose if you're flying legally, that's fine. But not only does it show, so first of all, aircraft and air traffic control aren't going to see red. It has no safety from that point of view. Manned aviation doesn't make you visible to manned aviation, so that's not helping. But not only does it reveal your aircraft's position, but it reveals your position, where you are stood, and that is a problem. Any bad actor could come, and the ability to record data, lots and lots of flight data on very, very simple devices, means that when we all rule the world in this chat here, we can set up our receivers and work out who's flying where and when, and then extrapolate perhaps by whom and create money from it. So it's open to all.
Yeah, DJI are turning on remote ID for all of their drones, basically, aren't they? All the ones that have got, which is actually going to shoot them in the foot, isn't it? Because how are they going to sell Aeroscope when you can get it for free now?
Well, that's another subject I wanted to talk about too. Is they talked about there's a list that was published by the FAA of the RID compliant drones, and I want to say there's 26, and half of them are DJI. Okay, so that's kind of like, let's create a solution for a problem. I mean, this is what all the cell phone app people want. Create a solution for a problem that either doesn't exist or we created. Now we got to get in and get it. And it's the same deal with the education thing and the Know Before You Fly app. This has been a thing with the rules. Nobody's been buying that. Nobody wants to know that. Nobody hears that. Nobody wants to get educated. They just want to go out and fly their drone. Now, Thursday, I'm doing a podcast with Ryan Wallace from Embry-Riddle, and they just put out a report with Assure. And I've looked over the report. And I will say, like talking to people in San Francisco that are federal law enforcement, we got thousands of drone flights here a day. And I'm like, I just don't believe that. I do not believe there's thousands of drone flights a day. And sure enough, there are not thousands of drone flights a day. And how did they get the data?
No.
I know. How'd they get the data? So how did they get the data for all of this? This is there. So there's a couple of questions. They did a sampling, but it's from Aeroscope, and it's DJI drones flying around, and it ought to be pretty telling. Now, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag on how the data was obtained until Thursday, but I don't think people are going to be happy about it. I'm not happy about it. I find it's a total invasion of privacy, and I don't care who you are. I mean, if public money, your tax dollars are paying for these things.
Well, here's some today. Who knows what the Zephyr Systems OKO250 is? I don't know what that is. But the Dragonfish, we know what they are. There's another drone type, Evo Light Plus. Oh, hello. Here come the Autel drones, 6th to the 11th. Mavic 3 Classic, there it is. Yeah, so this is the list, Patrick. So, in fact, I'm going to put it in the
There's multiple pages, too.
Yeah, this is the list.
That's the list.
As you say, only 4 pages though. So I mean, it's not really. It's not all that many. And these things don't have to be. Well, if you're making them now, they have to. If you're a manufacturer, they have to be compliant. And next September, anything that flies in the States, basically, I'm just finding out anything above 250 grams. So it's 250 grams is the
yeah, I'm still waiting for the kick in when people with their avatars that they've bought do their update and find it won't arm until you've connected your smartphone so that it becomes remote ID compliant.
It's a problem, and you alluded to it earlier, Gary, that people are going to wake up and they're going to be like, hey, wait a minute. Now I've heard the argument too. Well, cars have license plates on it. Yes, but in the car I have a method of escape. Yeah, I can drive away. I'm flying the plane and someone comes up to me. I don't, what am I going to do? Throw the run away, or I might, going to create an unsafe situation. So, or I can't lock the doors. I can't escape. I can't, you know what I'm saying? I think that argument is poor. The other thing is, now that we're going to find some of this data, I know that the FAA will find ways to shoot holes in it. It was the same thing that came up with the DJI data that they put out on their app. If we had that data in a form that was digestible by CEAAs, takeoffs and landings, time-wise, hours flown, things like that, I think we would have a better, let's say, data set that we could use to come back and say, hey, we're safer than GA.
It's just the other way. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. We do have the potential to have that stick, don't we? The all that data, the Aeroscope data that was leaked from the 66 machines of however many million flights it was. Yeah, you're exactly right. GA's got to, and it's got to start coming to the party.
There's
absolutely.
but there's no advocacy on that because I think we're at the point now where you can put together fact sheets and there is data, and you could say, hey, here's where we're at. Especially if we had DJI wanted to play ball. They don't want to play ball with anyone, but if we could get it in a form that aviation authorities would understand. I know they're not collecting data. I mean, that whole argument is so obtuse. I can't even stand it. It's so stupid. But anyway, let us have the data. I guess maybe we would have to buy it. And then there's some people out there and we could kind of categorize it and talk about it. And we could figure out that I'm pretty sure we're going to be like 10 to the -9, which is up there with the airlines. And then you come in and you have the facts and it's indisputable.
I wonder.
On paper,
I wonder that
tell the FAA you got to back off, man.
10 to the -9, the thing we all that nobody talks about anymore, like 2047 or 2049, the thing I can never remember which year it actually
2047.
was.
I had
2047. Yeah, I need to do that as well. I do need to do that as well. But that 10 to the 9, people seem to, only a handful of people seem to remember that 10 to the 9. And
because those excuses, the road signs and the excuses, Gary, you've seen them. They've changed over the decades. Remember?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
First fatality, and this is over.
Yes.
If you can't get third-party liability insurance, you have no industry. We are, a lot of these things. It's like, well, we already have that. Well, we already have some of this data. No, we got some of that. Okay, well, you're going to have to be 10 to the -9, which bring that up. And what that really means is like once and never, you have a fatality. And where we're at now since the kickoff of 107 is once and never. And even the stuff that was RC stuff, people were either participants, people were, like there was the one guy with a helicopter who gave himself a haircut. He just did it to himself, practicing, whatever. I mean, it's a tragedy. All of these things are tragedy, but you cannot do anything. I'm sure people die fishing, or whatever.
True. That's true.
Golf, even.
Gardening, whatever.
It's the safest hobby there is, I think.
I could say that unequivocally. No, I mean, the data is here now. If the industry, the problem that we have in this industry is the people that are making money, they don't want you in it. I mean, people don't understand that, but you look at like the drones as a service thing and, well, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Nobody wants you in there, looking at their pork chop. So they're not going to help you. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to do anything. Yeah, the waiver system's great. It locks everyone out. You talk to people, this company wants to get into that mining interest, but they don't, when I go and I tell them it's going to take 6 months or a year and cost this, they don't want to do it. Well, it's exactly how the system's set up.
This is one of the things that holds the whole industry back across all countries. It is getting those special exemptions where you want to do a bit of BV loss or you want to do something outside the box. You may as well just go, yeah, it's going to take you 18 months. And your business plan may as well just go.
Yeah, you got to have deep pockets.
How's it go again?
Exactly, and you have to have deep pockets, and you have to be able to manage expectations, and it's going to be hard. And now that the economy, I mean, they put some real lipstick on the pig on the economy over here. I don't know how it's going in your various countries, but I mean, it was barely a blip on the radar that Facebook lost $750 billion of market. I mean, it evaporated.
How many Twitters is that?
That's a lot of Twitter. My point with it is the cheap money is gone. So like your flying car companies, your aviation companies, which I would call these aerospace companies, the bigger drone companies, nobody wants to invest now. They're like, we'll lend you money at 10%, oh, great. Especially like if you're in the flying car business, you want to lend me money at 10%. I got another 10 years before I get some sort of certification. Let's hope you got deep pockets. So I think we're going to see, as far as the drone thing is concerned and the flying car thing is concerned, you're going to see money dry up. One other thing I did see today on the SUS News is that I think it was on SUS News, is that PG&E out here has got these beyond visual line of sight waivers. Now, if that's a continuation of the stuff with Precision Hawk, we all know, safety of the nest, but we all know that was a total fusscluck, and they're letting them go. Well, how are they going to do that? Well, it's a big company. They have lobbyists. They got friends in Congress. Get on the blower and, talk to people down at the FAA. So those are the issues. We're far enough along now that somebody should put up some money. You can do some fact sheets. You can prove that this is safe. And I do think that the FAA needs to back off. The other thing with this data from the aeroscopes is you can see they've got heat maps. And a lot of what I've seen, and this is again, I took a cursory look at things. A lot of the violations, there's always an airport near a major city. Or medium-sized city or whatever else. And remember, in the olden days, it used to be 3 miles from an airport. You remember that, Gary?
Yeah. No, all of it is. Well, what is it?
Actually, have you seen that video that Sean did with the local council, the orders that they put out, and when he inquired as to the justification for what they were doing, they basically boiled down to, we don't have any evidence, but one of our council employees saw something once that gave them a fright, so we're doing this. It's basically the threshold for evidence is so very low on their side and so very high on our side that even if we present them with irrefutable evidence, they will find a way to knock it back and say no.
I believe it, but you can't, deny the data, and the data would suggest it even now. Like I said, so now it's out 5 miles from the airport, and that's where a lot of these, let's say, I don't call them illegal, but gray flights are taking place. So the FAA's kind of increased, their workload, and that's where the violations are happening. So, maybe if we go back to the 3 mile thing, since there's been any fatalities or collisions, possibly things would change. I don't know. The data needs to be
reinstate 336.
And,
Reinstate 336. That should be the push.
Exactly. I agree 100%.
I'm just putting on people talking in the comments about the size of RID models. If you want a small RID beacon next September, when you have to comply with your greater than 250 gram model, here is one. Here it is. It's going in the.
But people should do civil disobedience. Tell them to stick their RID up their backside where it came from. That's what you need to do. My position on this is we are supposed to avoid manned aircraft, right? So the burden for being seen should fall on manned aircraft. Yet, because we can have these things, we can detect aircraft with ADS-B. So why is it that every drone over 250 grams will have RID, but not every manned aircraft will have ADS-B? You've got to have parity, because we've got to look out for them, not the other way around. So RID does nothing, but ADS-B does something very important. If we all had ADS-B and we'll have these things, then there would never be a conflict.
Bruce, don't use common sense. You know better.
Well, even John here said, Lance is great for flying within 5 miles of an airport. It used to be 3 miles of an airport. And I do believe that the 5 mile expansion was unnecessary. And also, the 336 never coming back with those crooks and hipsters and cell phone appsters. You are correct, because they have to lobby a niche, or their solution has to have a problem. And that's what happened with 336. A lot of these flying fields have been there for decades. Why do they need to be reclassified? Why weren't they grandfathered in? People knew they were there. There's a lot of flying fields that are near airports, and people knew they were there, and they coexisted for decades.
Johnny's mentioning it here.
Don't. Yeah. When we had flight restrictions brought in the UK, airports, all of a sudden, there were some model flying clubs that fell inside flight restriction zones. The airports took absolutely the opportunity to go, hey, you can't fly without our permission. We're not letting you fly. It was, the CAA did nothing to defend them or help them. And some clubs have moved, as I understand it. But, it wasn't a lot that were affected, but it was enough.
It's a common thing that we always loop back round to, is we're killing the entry level next design, and not killing them, but we're stopping the next level engineers, the entry level,
graying out the industry.
Yeah, it's not cool.
Exactly.
It's not cool at all.
Well, that was the whole benefit of the electric revolution, was that no longer did I have to. I mean, every country that I know of, is land is getting very expensive. It's prohibitive. So I don't know how these clubs will stay in the future as these cities grow. Land is worth so much money, you can't afford it. So the electric revolution, made it something that I could go to the park and fly, or I could go to the high school and fly, or I could just go to an open field and fly. And now, a lot of this stuff is becoming a problem. It's becoming burdensome. And as we've talked about before, in some instances, you have to have parent supervision. Parents are both working. So most of them are working 2 jobs. I don't have time unfortunately, I don't have time to invest with this. I don't work for the government. I got a private sector job. So those are graying the industry. That's killing the industry, and needlessly. You can't fly a pound of foam around, It's knee jerk. It went too far.
And that's the other thing too. The models we used to fly were a damn sight more dangerous than the models we fly today. The safety profile of our operations has improved dramatically. The risk profile has dropped right down, because we're not flying large planks of wood with internal combustion engines on them that weigh 4 or 5 pounds. We're flying half a kilo of foam, which is frangible and has an electric motor on the back, driving a tiny little prop. But this is the thing that really gets me, is none of the regulators have drawn a distinction between fixed wing, traditional hobby, and a Mavic. They haven't drawn any distinction between, and the risk profiles of those craft are totally different due to the type of people operating them mainly, but they've drawn no distinction. They've chosen not, either that or they're so stupid they can't tell 4 props from 1, but I think they've chosen not to make a distinction because it makes their job easier and it assists in this role of getting us out of that airspace.
I do think in the UK, one of the biggest problems was when they ditched Cap 658, which was the model aircraft cap. You know, and that was clearly separate from 722. That was really good. That was one of the best caps I'd seen and read, and all about hobby flying. And then along comes Cap 722, which is overcomplicated, full of all the YASA BS they had to involve into it, and completely trashed Cap 722 into goo to the most part.
Cap 722 wasn't too bad in 2008. I'm sure you remember that, Gary. Remember, it seemed kind of workable. The other thing is with that is, remember talking to, what is it, BMAF? Was that the English?
BMFA, yeah,
modelers?
BMFA, yeah,
BMFA. They kind of did the AMA thing, and I'm sure you remember that too. I pleaded, let's do something. Let's line in the sand. We got it, you know.
Well, they wanted to keep the 658 and the Large Model Association was offered because the Large Model Association in the UK has a sort of a certification scheme for those big Warbird model aircraft, and they do go through like an airworthiness test, not as rigorous as a manned one, but they are tested, and it's a very, very good system. And the CAA originally said to them, don't you want to be in charge of drones as well? And they said, no, because that's going to be commercial. That's going to be commercial, and we're model aircraft, and we must keep it separate, which I thought at the time was the right thing to do. But now, no, I don't think that. But that's in hindsight. Now
they've all been bought out. They've all been offered little benefits, little trinkets, little baubles and beads. You take these and support us, and look, you'll be better off. It's like colonization. It was beads and blankets to the ignorant. I mean, that's what we ended up with the representative bodies. It was the same around the world.
I mean, the BMFA did get shafted at one point, though, by the CA, didn't they? Because the CA wouldn't discuss it. So I think there was a big falling out between the two at one point, and they the CA just said, no, this is the way it is. And the BMFA was like, we've had this.
Well,
so
you had
just went, nah.
Well, I don't like that. I don't like that regulators are saying model aircraft have been around for, I think it was EASA said have been around for 60 years or something. He's like, no, hang on, mate. Hang on, model aircraft were around before manned flight. No, that's not true. There's a
lot of ignorance, but you're right on the beads and the blankets there. I mean, that's what happened with the AMA. I mean, I was sitting right next to Rich Hansen and the woman from.
I hope his snoring didn't keep you awake.
No, but he did sit. He sat there, and she came in and said, "We're writing the rules for the hobby." And I just said, "Rich, mobilize the membership." A couple of days later, no, we worked out a deal. They were going to be the blessed CBO. Even this 250 drones and the registration, I tipped off Chad and Rich and the rest of the guys at the AMA, and I go, "You guys, man, they're coming for you." And no, talk to them. They didn't. No, they're not. I'm like, no, they're coming for you. I'm guaranteeing it today. No, we got a deal worked out with them, and they wouldn't even return. They didn't. They left. No, we got it worked out with them. We got it. It's fine. We're going to be the CBO.
It's even worse.
So that was how that in the U.S. and they thought that the FAA told them you're going to be the blessed CBO, and they had actually. Told their staff, get ready for 1 million paid members. They thought they hit the jackpot. And then it came back, the FAA was like, oh, we can't bless you to be the organization. It doesn't work.
Yes, there's more than one.
We can't give you a monopoly. So they sold out the membership for the the beads and the magic beans, and the rest is history. So, it goes back again. There is a time right now, I think you got the data, going to need some money, but you could go back and you could say, this thing's totally overblown. What happened to the war on terror? Anybody remember that? We had all of these.
It's the war on disinformation now.
Okay, whatever, but the thing is, we had some, ideological nut job behind every shrub, but now we got time to, look at little drones and foam and, don't they have chubbier fish to fry? And I don't know how the airports and the airlines are doing in your countries, but we've got some serious problems over here with the airlines and the airports and all the rest of that stuff. I think there's going to be some serious fallout coming up quick here.
The big problem though with this whole CBO thing, well, I warned a year ago when they brought out the whole CBO thing, it's a regulation by indirection, because FAA are now dictating what CBO's rules should be to be accepted as a CBO. So they're able to actually dictate the rule set of the CBO, which isn't a regulation, but if you don't have those rules for your people, you don't get CBO status. So they're able to roll out whatever changes and restrictions and whatever they want through the granting of CBO status, which can be reviewed, of course. So they basically laid out a whole list of new restrictions, regulations, rules that have to be complied with to become a CBO. So that's like creating new regulation without the normal regulatory process. But that's what they've done. They provide that indirection. It's like when you have a bylaw in a town which says you must not do this, or you can only do this under the provisions of our policy. Therefore, your policy makes the rules. You don't have to go through the whole rule-making process, the submissions and all the consultation. They've done that. So basically, if the AMA wants to be, or anyone wants to be a CBO, they have to comply with the FAA's views of what good rules are for CBOs. It's crazy.
It is crazy. And the thing with that is, again, though, this industry has done this to themselves. It was the same with this registration task force and the 250 grams. You had, it was Brendan Schulman and Nancy Egan and that other guy from Parrot sitting in there, and they sat there and went along with this stuff. And they went along with this stuff because they were told that they were going to get, that was a backroom deal. Oh, they assured us it was this, and we're going to get that, and it's going to be okay. And even asking Nancy Egan, I said, you let the FAA, the regulator, liken your products to shrapnel from bombs and explosions.
Yes.
Well. And then I said, I go, well, maybe you should put up some money. You guys should put up some money to do a little research to do like kinetic energy testing. Why would we do that? The FAA is going to pay for it. I'm like, you're telling me that you're going to let the regulator that knows nothing about your products and what your customers do the research? Well, yeah.
But don't forget, there was massive naive Silicon Valley sort of. Well, it's okay. We'll push the regulations out of the way. Thinking it's okay. The regulations will get out of the way for us. We're the brave new world. We're the frontier of cutting edge stuff. Everyone's going to agree with us. Look how shiny our things are. Look how clever we are. Look. It's Silicon Valley. Look, it's all going to work.
Yeah,
of course the regulators are going to move.
It's funny you say that, Gary, but if we look at all of the things that are kind of failing right now, driverless cars, that crypto, the drone thing, a lot of these different technologies that that Silicon Valley is in, and the flying cars and all the rest of it. I mean, they just have the horse blinders on when it comes to regulation, and all of them for years. Chris Anderson, 3D Robotics. I mean, I go, dude, you're not going to end run these guys. That is not how this works. They are going to end run you, and they're going to put you in the corner. No. And then talking to people that are, principals at Microsoft and all the rest of it, you tell them what the regulatory hurdles are. They didn't care. BlackRock, the rest, nobody cares. So that was totally neglected. And even now, as it goes on, and they have these different committees and groups, they still have so many people on there that are totally unqualified to be there. They think they're going to fix everything with a cell phone app, and they're finally getting to the point where they're talking to the air traffic controllers, and the air traffic controllers are like, wait, what are you talking about? Because remember, like everything was going to be under 400 feet, the AAM, the commercial drones, and all the rest of that. Oh, not anymore. All of this AAM stuff is all at higher altitudes. Oh, it's not going to work under 400 feet. You know,
The buzzword's
So now
integration.
you're getting all these
Sorry,
people.
say again,
involved.
Bruce. What was that?
Just saying the buzzword they keep using is integration rather than segregation. That's the big mistake.
It's going to be hard.
Well,
It's gonna be very hard.
that Aliyah thing takes 600 feet to, if it has an engine failure on the VTOL mode, it takes 600 feet to recover to winged flight. So that thing straight out of the box has got to be above 600 feet to be operating safely. So we'll add a margin to that. Let's add another 600 feet because we've got to react. So I could see 1,200 feet as its operating altitude, general operating altitude, as just out of the box. Yeah, as you say, integration's got to happen. But if you think, if you think the regulations around certifications are slow moving, wait till you just watch and wonder and marvel at just how slow the integration into air traffic control is going to be. and the risk aversion there is in the air traffic control world is
But don't forget, Google sitting in the wings, all its AI, it'll roll out a human-free air traffic system, all run by AI with a bit of help from Elon so that they don't collide into each other. It'll all be automated, fantastically automated. We won't need people. All these things will take care of themselves, and there would be no more deaths than falling aircraft.
I've told this story 1,000 times on this, maybe 999. When I was working in Scottish, they had a whole room for the oceanic tracks, a room with strips on it. It was a huge room because once aircraft are out of radar coverage, you've got to sort of follow them manually and moving down on flight strips and reporting points. The plan was to computerize that. This is in the 80s. It was going to get rid of all of this. We're going to have the computer run it. The computer installation took a lot longer than they thought, but they'd already decided they needed that room for offices. So they demolished that room. Well, they not demolished it, but they took all the strips out of it. Said, it'll be all right. And like the next day, 1 minute after all the last bit had gone, the computers fell over, and there was absolute chaos in that part of
It was Gatwick all over again.
It was Gatwick. It was Gatwick 30 years before Gatwick was a thing. So we've seen they will have to run. They will have to run. I don't know. This is Richard's view, but they'll have to run something for at least a year, I should think, side by side with standard systems before they could be trusted. I'm sure.
All of that, the idea. I mean, I will say that Wisk, that company, is their CEO at least is a little forthcoming. But the idea that you're not going to have a pilot and it's going to be like this automatic,
No. Did you see the CNET video on Wisk? Did you watch that CNET video on Wisk? They're going to have a room where people, presumably pilots, will be sitting there in case there's a problem with one of the pilotless craft. They will then take over and navigate. The thing is to have one person for every 10 craft. Now, if we go back to Dallas Airport last month when they lost GPS in a 40-mile radius, if you've got hundreds of craft in that radius and you've only got one pilot per 10 craft, what are the other 9 going to do when you lose the GPS and it doesn't know where it is or where it's going?
Not going to work. It's not going to work. And all of these aircraft, I mean, I tell people, look, and I said this too to Joby and the rest of Uber and all the rest of people who are on stage. It's like, look, we have spent 20 years trying to integrate a 250-gram drone into the NAS, and you guys think you're going to be flying these things around in 2020? Oh, yeah, it's going to be great. Not happening. You're going to have to upgrade pretty much the whole aviation system. And then the other thing is I look at these vertiports and it's like, have you even flown a quadcopter off the sidewalk? Has anyone even done that?
I'm a vertiport operator. Don't you disrespect vertiports?
Yeah,
I'm all over that.
I'd rather land at yours because you just took down all those trees, and at least I'm not going to, you don't have any light posts up I'm going to hit. I mean, I always say, it's like, can you get any more abstractions in here, man? Put more light poles in here. Put more flags in here. You gotta have something I can hit on the way in. I mean, it's totally ridiculous.
Throw a few loose canvases on the ground around the landing area. That always works for helicopters.
That too, whatever. Or don't, where are the signs? I don't see the signs that says no smiling, and to take off, landing and take off.
But the FAA. Sorry, after you, Mark.
Well, I was going to say, what about the warning that you're going to get blown over by an aircraft as it takes off? What sort of separation has anyone worked out yet? What the downdraft's going to do?
As long as I get my.
Can you imagine how much downdraft? So it's going to be interesting because you could be walking on a sidewalk, and next thing you know, you're walking in the road because the machine's just downdraft, just blowing you away.
Well,
what does Louis think?
Yeah, what does Louis think? That's winter time with Louis.
I'm so delighted to hear you guys talk, and end of the day, they will do whatever they want. We are not organized to do anything. So how do we overcome these regulations and abide by them in a way that we can still enjoy the fun? That's my question. I'm not worried about professional users. Those have a way. There are ways on the regulations for them to keep operating. The thing is, instead of us crying here all day, all night, oh, they're so bad. Oh my God, they took us our toy. Let's find a way.
I found a way. I have a way. I have a plan, Louis. I have a plan. See this? This is the first part of my plan. I'm doing a series of videos to educate regulators and to show them with facts and data and logic. And then I'm going to encourage every single drone operator in the world to send a link of that video to the regulator. When they get thousands of links.
You have Jacinta over there, so you're not going to do anything on the regulators. Let's assume it. Let's work with the worst case scenario. And the worst case scenario is the rules are here to stay. Everything, the remote ID, the visual observers, the community areas, everything. How can we overcome and be within the rules to keep enjoying a hobby? That's because, come on, FPV guys, everybody is on the same boat. There is no unity on the professional, on the hobbyists. Usually hobbyists don't get around a cause, and even if they would do, they would be regarded as boys with toys. So how can we help the community of how can we help young people to come up with a way to be compliant with the regulations and still enjoy the fun?
No, we don't need to be compliant with regulations that are equivalent of a man with a red flag in front of our cars. We need to let the regulators know what good regulation looks like and then tell them they need to adopt it. And all the regulation is by consent. They don't have people stand on street corners ready to give you an infringement notice. So without our consent, the regulations are worthless. We've got to show to them that you give a good balance between freedoms and safety, and we'll follow those by consent. But if you don't, you develop a culture of non-compliance. As soon as one rule, like this rule here, is not complied with largely, then the community says, it's okay to disobey that rule because it's not important. So let's disobey ones that are also inconvenient. And that's when danger
I respect you a lot. But the thing is, at the moment, you're just shouting on the border of the highway. Hey, don't mind the 120 of the speed limit. Go as fast as you want. That's what you're saying.
I am, because there are no police out there to catch us. No one's policing. People have been breaking these rules with impunity because there's no enforcement. So we can do it.
Hey, I respect that, but I think it's a bad advice that we do to the young people. To tell them, hey, just forget the 120 of the speed limit. Just go 200, and nothing will.
We tell them. Don't endanger people. Don't endanger property. That's it. That's the only two rules. Don't endanger people or property. Everything else is advisory.
Let's promote a safe procedures.
Well, I don't know how it is.
We are already safe.
But,
By the way, we are already more than safe. So let's assume code of conducts, whatever it is, that can make people respect the hobbyist community, and in time get the okay. Those guys did well. They didn't go 200 on the highway. Let's release the rules a bit. So I believe that we have two ways to face this. Either we go head to head, bumping heads, and nothing will happen, or we comply and try to change within compliance.
I disagree. Disagree. Look at that. If you comply, you're showing that their rules work. We've got evidence. This visual observer thing, right? If you go on YouTube, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of videos of people flying FPV without a visual observer. Not one death, not one instance of property damage. We have proven by non-compliance that this rule is unnecessary. And that's the proof that we take to them and say, look, there we go. And we've proven that we are able to make a judgment call. Sometimes we use visual observers when it's necessary to ensure safety. But as a community, we've been making that judgment call. Give us the legal right to do so. Just change this one rule and it's the start. Then you'll get compliance. And then you develop a culture of compliance. And then your rules have an effect. At the moment, they have no effect because people say, bugger, I'm just going to go fly anyway.
Oh, sorry.
All right, but Bruce, the only other...
There's a good way to comply with your visual observer. You just do an agreement with the Blind People Association and have people from that association become your visual observers. Come on, it's just showing the ridiculous of their situation.
That might be easier than because the other issue that we have here is Bruce, what you're talking about is makes sense and it's something that's logical. But the other thing that we have here is when you do have a Section 336 and you have the hipsters with the VC money paying their lobbyists to lobby Congress to tell them to get that out of the FAA reauthorization. The main reason that Section 336 went down is it was lobbied against by the Commercial Drone Alliance and all of their members, AUVSI, some of the other groups that are here, all lobbied to get rid of that. They needed to get rid of that so their cell phone apps would have a market. So anyway, I do think that we're at the time with the data to back that up. We just need money to combat the VC crowd. But anyway, I got to go, guys, because I got to go to work. But thanks a lot for having me on.
All right. All right.
He said a 4-letter word.
Nice seeing you, Patrick.
Work, yeah.
Demonetized.
Swearing. Yeah, that's right.
But he's right though, because I queried CAA about the visual observer rule. I said this rule's pretty pointless, and they said, well, we don't make the rules. You have to talk to your member of parliament. And I thought, hang on a minute, you don't make the rules? They think that they told me that it is the politicians that make the rules. And so do they really understand their role? Because, and if you look at the paperwork, no, they don't make the rules. But when you look at reality, as we've seen in New Zealand, when the politicians said, we want drone registration, CAA said, no, we don't think it's going to be useful. So they then moved that to a different department where they had more control. Yeah, the politicians make the rules, and that's driven by lobbyists and money.
Mark's going to go as well. All right, Mark. Cheerio. I see you saying that in the comments. Well, let's look. We're over the hour, so we ought to. Cheers, mate. Take care. Look after yourself. And Mark's got a ranty video. If you want to find his channel, you'll find his channel. And he's got a ranty video about C ratings. What did we see before we go? What did we see in the news this week that's worth talking about?
Nothing. But I'll tell you what, there's going to be a huge market in drones for military. And I'm talking like equivalents of Mavics. You've been watching those videos where they're dropping the grenades on the Russian soldiers and things. It's not taking out a lot of people, but I think the vengeance weapon potential of that to put fear in the hearts of people. It's amazing. So I think most governments around the world now will be looking at developing tools specifically for that task from this point forward.
Well, I find it astounding that military, a lot of military analysts are suddenly having this conversation around that. It's like, where have you been? They've been in Afghan and all sorts of places for years. This asymmetric warfare sort of thing and other buzzwords that they drop into these conversations left, right, and center to pad out.
You're muted, Louis. I couldn't hear you.
No, I was just saying in Afghanistan we didn't have TikTok. So now you have TikTok to shoot those candy.
Now we have TikTok. The wars will be much shorter.
I wish you weren't right, Louis. You are right. I wish you weren't.
No,
right,
I know.
but you're right.
Unfortunately, I know I'm right. Unfortunately, that's the problem. Things you don't see, you don't feel it.
It doesn't exist.
So the moment you see a guy landing a Phantom, and 2 seconds later a mortar blows up where the Phantom was, when you see those videos releasing the grenades or whatever it is from a Mavic, everything is crazy. You see those huge donations of drones from wherever country in the world to send to Ukraine to help out. People get a different impression. Hey, that's a toy, but that's a toy that can be used for nefarious purposes. So one of these days, Bruce, you'll get the same kind of restrictions that you get by carrying an handgun. So
we'll all move to America where there are no restrictions for carrying a handgun, but there
yes,
are more restrictions for having a drone.
Hey, you have to go to Texas. Don't worry. So
the interesting thing is that, sorry,
no, go ahead.
Carry on,
go ahead.
Louis. Well, for years, the America's stuffed itself with ITAR regulations to get their equipment out, to get their civil use commercial. Let's just forget this military use.
I remember ITAR.
Yeah, exactly. They've stuffed themselves with ITAR. Now they're wondering why they haven't got a drone industry that can compete. It was ITAR. It never gets mentioned by people saying that, oh, dear, why are we so far behind? Well, because technically you couldn't. I mean, ITAR was a complete pain in the backside. It was, what's it actually stand for? International Trade and Arms Regulations or something like that. But it meant that you couldn't export your American-made drone because it had potential military use.
It was so misapplied.
For me,
Even
the worst
software
on ITAR is me trying to buy those foams that you would buy from the 3D robotics shop. Insulate the Pixhawk. And
I've pulled lots of those.
The order was cancelled because it was under the ITAR regulations.
ITAR, exactly. I know I've got some of those somewhere. Whatever that foam was, I know I've got some of that. Yeah, it was crazy, and it and even there was one manufacturer in the 80s, late 80s. And he went to Australia and had his idea. And because he had his idea in Australia, that didn't then fall under ITAR. And then he went back to America and made the stuff. And he could sell the stuff out of America, but the idea was in Australia. So that was okay then. I
think one of the reasons New Zealand government got its backside kicked by the US government was when I did my cruise missile thing 20 years ago, and I contacted our local Ministry of Trade and Industry and said, could I export this to Iraq, I think it was at the time, because I had all sorts of inquiries from around the world. Could I really legally export this? They said, yeah, sure. And when the Americans found out, I don't think they were very happy about that.
Yeah. So the quick pivot to and we've been not warning, but saying, come on, guys, this is what's happening. And
after that missile story that Bruce told us, he has the dark background. So guys, boys and girls,
most of my money comes from the dark web.
From that man.
But you were pointing out the idiocracy of it back then, weren't you? I think, Bruce, that was part
nothing
of the whole...
changes. There's different people in the same seats. Nothing changes.
Yeah, Mark's channel is, I've forgotten who can remember what Mark's channel is called? Droning On is
All about drones or something, is it?
All
I
about
don't know.
drones. All about drones. That's it. That's Mark's channel. It's all about drones. Yeah. So that fast pivot to military analysts saying, "Oh, we could do this," but for years they've been denying it because they've been allowing, or not denying it, but they've been running cover for the companies that stood up and did very well out of the original Sandy Wars, with really subpar, basically model aircraft with with the conspicuity grey paint. That's what I was used to say.
Should have painted them brown.
Yeah, all you required to make a military drone was conspicuity grey paint, and that was it. You take your Ben Buckle kit and paint it grey, and there you are. You've got a military drone, and that's.
But what's the bit? That's the next thing they'll use. They'll go back to safety for restrictions, saying, "Oh, this could happen in our country. People could use these drones to do that." And this is a big problem. And I would just roll out that same answer. Then, if you're worried about people dropping grenades from drones, you don't have a drone problem. You have a grenade problem.
Yes, absolutely. I want to find that phone
sorry,
now.
Bruce. The drone or the grenade are not the problem. The servos that release the grenade are the problem. So the servos are the trigger. So let's ban servos.
Look. There's. I'm trying to find it, but there's a History Channel one. I'm trying to find
3D.
I'm trying to find my military spec foam.
You're not making me go back and get myself my 3D robotics drone, right?
No, I'm looking for my military spec foam. I've got here somewhere. I have got some somewhere. I know I have. And that actually became an issue because, people on the forums would say you've got to use whatever that 3DR foam was.
Yeah.
And then people got very upset because they couldn't buy it. And then people were, that caused such havoc. I remember. I'm glad you mentioned that, Louis, because I had completely forgotten that. I'd completely forgotten that.
For me, that was the best thing about ITAR. 4 pieces of foam are under those rules.
But it was worse. They couldn't even export PKZip because that was under ITAR. And Phil Zimmerman was complaining about that way back. And open source software, no, can't do that because it's in munitions. It was classified as munitions file compression software.
Yeah. And that's why, DivView, if you didn't know, that is why 3DR manufactured in Mexico. That's exactly why they manufactured in Mexico.
Not only for that, we know that.
No, but it was a big part of it. It was a big
because they used burritos to make the frame.
Yeah,
exactly. Because I think
don't forget that Jordi Munoz, the current MR Robotics
from Mexico, yes,
is from that area over there. So,
but Chris thought he was going to get around ITAR. Chris really thought ITAR wasn't an issue
applicable to this. Yeah, we all remember that. Those that have been on this hobby long enough.
We were there.
Still remember the joys of dealing with all
the other thing was, and was it? I think it was you, Louis, that said about these RC timer radios. When you remove that, it's still got the 3DR branding on the back of the radio or on the board. Happy days.
It's just as well ITAR wasn't around during the heyday of the DC Sabre and the EDBA.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's nonsense stories. No, I built that. That's I can't remember what part of an autopilot that was. That was oh dear. It's Gary goes through his drawers time again. It's never good, is it? It's never good when that happens. I saw the image you put of your desk the other day out there, Bruce, I think on the Twitters, and I will certainly be able to rival you for that sort of organization and tidiness, that's for sure.
I just tweeted an image of drone regulations as well.
Oh, did you now?
Yes, I did.
But who's there to see? There's no one there. Everyone's on
my follower
Mastodon
probably
now.
saw it.
I don't know. I've tried Mastodon. I actually do quite like it. Actually, it is a lot quieter, and it is.
Mastodon,
So that suits me.
I've known Mastodon for quite some time because one of the podcasts I subscribe as a Mastodon server for quite some time. But that's remember the BBSs? That's what Mastodon looks like.
It's FidoNet for messaging. Yeah.
FidoNet.
Yeah.
It's all there.
So
It's all there.
that's why we have the white beards.
Yeah, I suppose so.
And if you're a bit younger, UUCP.
Yeah.
Now, what else, other news-wise, we see before we go?
Well, what I've been noticing, and I don't know if you guys noticed that too, that our friends from Shenzhen, DJI, seem to have some issue with deliveries.
Oh, do they? I've missed that.
So, for instance, the FPV remote, the one that looks like the PlayStation thing, out of order for months, and no that one, Bruce. Yeah, I'll send you this one, and you send me that one.
Yeah, fair enough. That seems like a good
PlayStation. No, just PlayStation. Come on, that's the safest way to do RC flying, Bruce. You should try it.
I still have my little metal case with a button on it. That's the safest way. 1 click for right, 2 clicks for left.
1 click,
3
yes.
clicks,
Rubber band escape. Wait till the rubber band runs out.
On the open source front, I'm sure that you saw it, Gary, but most of our viewers haven't. Check out the latest demos that Andrew Tridgell and Marco Robostini did on how to do plane aerobatics with a flight controller, almost perfect routines. I'm just waiting for any of those competitions that you do on RC planes. The judges opening up the plane, trying to find a flight controller inside that does those maneuvers so perfectly. That is,
and what's those are called CMAC, aren't they? Those maneuvers, they're called something,
there's,
aren't they?
There's IMAC, which is there's a whole lot of them. The F3 rather is. Yeah.
You can do that. You can do that anywhere, and it's quite easy to do. And the feedback to Tridge was so high that he had to do a step-by-step tutorial on how to do it.
And I think
next thing will be not planes, but also rotary wings.
Yeah, helicopter. Yeah, they're doing the helicopter stuff, aren't they? But I think what people have also been saying, well, what's the point? What's the use case? We like hand flying, etc., etc., etc. But there's training, but there's also I can see some really interesting use cases then for overpowered standard looking aircraft for almost VTOL landings. If you're overpowered and you have got the ability to knife edge it,
that's just 3D, man. That's just thumbs. That's just down to thumbs, mate.
Yeah, no, but not really, not consistently not for most delivery drone companies. It won't be down to thumbs, but yeah, it's it has a lot of.
Jumper have put out a VTOL. Jumper put out a transitioning fixed wing.
The thing is,
the radio control people.
That shows you that now that ArduPilot has become a very mature software stack. The flight stack is very mature, very reliable,
just like us.
Something that began 4 years ago. I might be wrong because of the COVID. But I believe the initiative of having scripts running inside the flight controller is paying off, and not only for this. Come on, this is a gimmick, but the possibility that was only available to do with companion computers, Raspberry Pis,
Yes.
and the
Yes,
Jetsons running plugged in, and all those crazy frameworks that would run on top and would tell the flight controller to do things. I believe that 70 or 80% of the applications
Yes.
can be sorted out
Yes.
with
Yes.
some clever use of Lua scripting. And it's not so much the knife edges, the loopings, and all that the Tridge demonstrates. That demonstration just shows what it is extremely easy to put in place. And I believe this will pump up the usage of ArduPilot as a very very solid system to use on professional levels.
So we
Not
could see
only
these
for
in
amateurs.
F-16s as air combat autopilots.
No. Hey, then ArduPilot does not have the intention of calling the next version Maverick, so don't worry. No Top Gun versions still on the roadmap. But no, this clearly, for people that are beginning to look at professional usage, look at it. It might surprise you the possibilities that are able to be done with simple Lua scripting.
There could be whole new classes of competition for programmers flying model aircraft.
Yeah. It starts to make it all a bit dull, though,
Well,
doesn't it?
I saw a video of a Tesla the other day that did a roll.
Is that the one that accelerated
one in
through
China.
the
Yeah, the
street?
unintended acceleration or whatever it was. Man, that was pretty scary, wasn't it?
Hey,
Yeah.
very strange that the brake lights never came up any time.
Are the brakes brake by wire, or is there a hydraulic system? How
I
disconnected
believe-
is the
I
brake
don't-
pedal from the computer?
I believe it's both. But funny. Something fishy over there. Someone
have been
that
loosened
didn't
up
like
behind
the
the wheel.
color of the Tesla and wants a new free Tesla, perhaps.
Yeah, just has to replace all those people that took out in between.
Yeah.
Anything requiring vision will still require a companion computer. Well, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. Anything?
No. Sorry. Yeah, at the moment, yes. Wait.
Yeah, it's
moment, yes.
not long. Yeah, it's not long, and that's going to be on board.
Look at the latest companion, the latest boards that run ArduPilot with H7s, multi-core processors. So the possibilities of getting some of integrating, for instance, the Intel type of cameras that do binocular vision. We at ArduPilot already have code that allows a companion computer to do it. Next step, everything on the flight stack. But come on, I don't know if that's a good thing to have on the flight controller. The flight controller should fly and fly well. And these should be add-ons. That's a personal opinion. Sorry, guys.
Yes, you want systems that can fail on their in their own accord somewhere else. If you get into clever bits, let's put them over there and
The least amount of
fail. And
I don't want a bug
we'll
on
keep going.
OpenCV. I don't want a bug on OpenCV or TensorFlow or whatever you're going to use to process vision data to stall the flight controller.
Well,
Put a 4090 in there. The fans alone will generate enough thrust to fly it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I don't know where Ian was. I don't know if he's flown his thing yet. But you can almost see because we've got an autopilot, co-pilot, autopilot. So the naming conventions also need to change it. It's like you could almost have pilot and mission commander. It is what it would almost
Airplane
be.
self-drive. Airplane
No.
self-drive.
I'll look at it on the back of a Chinese
I'm going to
box
suggest
somewhere.
this.
It'd be
I'm going
great.
to suggest this on a next meeting. We'll just call it in honor of Bruce, Visual Observer. So
Yes.
we had a visual observer on the autopilot. That will make Bruce very happy. Then when he flies, he says, "Hey, I do have a visual observer."
But those
But I
regulators
think-
are cunning. They say it must be a competent visual observer unaided by visual augmentation. So it's just they try and cover all. You can't use your dog or anything.
but I'm sure having just using the naming convention autopilot probably hasn't done us any favors, because in a regulator's purview, an autopilot is something that Meatware switches on. It means something different.
Yeah, but
in
it's-
some
it's-
ways.
It's like the drone world. It has gone so far that it's very hard to do.
Yes, true. Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah,
autopilots
fair
are an intrinsic
point.
part of aviation now. They're accepted, they're acknowledged, people rely on them so heavily. It's probably good that it's called an autopilot. It gives it some credibility.
Yeah,
and
I
don't
think we
forget-
could have some long conversations about naming.
Don't
and
forget
how it
about
might
that
assist the way
movie
through.
from a few years ago. That
Airplane.
Airplane. You would
Yeah.
invoke the autopilot.
I think the
Yes.
original fly-by-wire is still best, control line.
Control line, yes. Well, even that's getting regulated away in some places, isn't it?
Yeah.
And don't they need? I think they need RID on control line, don't they? Or something like
Probably
that.
if the lines are longer than a certain length, you would.
Yeah, good old control line. And the earlier mention was made of model flying from an airfield, and we used to fly control line at an airfield. So yeah.
I had a guy contact me this week. They fly models in the airfield like we do, and the airfield owner has decided they don't want them there, and there's all sorts of hassles going on. And we're getting just marginalised every day, pushed a little bit further out of the mainstream.
Absolutely. I'm a bit tempted. Even all the talk of control, I'm a bit tempted to have a control line again, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe
Make
not,
it FPV.
Make it FPV. Oh God!
Now, there's an idea for a video, isn't it?
And you can have a super duper HD video coming down the wire. It's proper. Look at this
With
quality.
Dolby sound.
And yes, and like zero latency. It's something fantastic. That's the future of FPV. Gosh, it's almost like a Martel TV guided missile. Then
Question is, would you need a visual observer?
Well, quite.
Most likely.
Quite. Dear me. But they fly at some extraordinary speed, some of those things, don't they? The ones where basically they strap a motor to the end of a bit of wire and have no wing at all.
It's all metal.
Yeah. Those things are dangerous. Those are dangerous.
Those are very dangerous.
Yeah.
I watched a video the other night of one of those actually, and he starts it up and it's burbling away, and you think, oh, it'll get on the pipe soon, and then it jumps up and revs, and he lets it go, and it's going around. I think, oh, it's not very fast. Then it does get on the pipe, and the revs triple, and the damn thing is just a blur. It's amazing how faster than the pulse jet ones. They're so quick. I don't know, it must be nearly, well over 250 miles an hour, I would think.
Hey, let's not forget the fastest RC plane doesn't even have a motor. So
true, very true.
Just dynamic
very,
soaring.
very true.
Yeah.
But that's ground
they're
speed, not
hectic.
airspeed.
They're head cases. They are head cases. Those hiding behind their bit of wood. Yeah, that's a great idea. They are head cases. Peppermint's mentioning rubber band free flight. Yeah, I know. I should get into that again as well. I used to love that. I aspire to go to the. I'm going to almost make this the end of this. To the meet at Old Warden, where all the old duffers go in their jackets and everything, and they chuck all these things into the sky. With
A Mil 75 to the side of the head. Oh,
that's exactly right. Exactly right. It's the most, thank goodness regulators haven't spotted that.
We are putting a expiry date on ourselves. Come on, guys. We are going.
No.
We are showing we are showing our age. Come on, guys.
I'll speak for yourself, Louis. Some of us are still young.
Yeah. No, but there's, the skill and involved to correctly to make a free flight aircraft fly properly, nicely. It's hard work. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to have built it properly.
Even if you put pendulum elevator on it, still requires trimming.
Yes, absolutely. You steal it from a pinball machine. No, that would be too heavy. That one.
I think that's prior art to Argipilot, isn't it? The pendulum elevator.
I don't know. I wonder when the first one was actually put in a modeling magazine. I bet it would have been 1900 and.
Yeah, it was very early on. Yeah.
Very early 19s, maybe even 1890 or something. And for those that don't know, is you have a pendulum, as Bruce has suggested, and that connects to the flying surfaces. So when it moves, the control surfaces move the other way to correct it, to correct whatever imbalance.
It's like a gyro for your elevator. It's fantastic.
Like a gyro for your elevator. Absolutely. Well, when did the first ones there? That would have been the 70s. Gyros came in.
Gyros, yeah, for helicopters when helicopters became a thing. So it would have been the 70s, and they were mechanical rate gyros. I had one in my helicopter.
Yes.
Sounded like a little turbine spinning up.
Yeah, if I go to those boxes, I've got a couple in there somewhere.
And they drifted a lot.
Yes,
they
that's
drifted,
right.
and they took their own time to get up to speed. So if you were in an hurry and wanted to fly in less than 5 minutes, you would find some flight issues. Let's just say it like that.
Autonomous dynamic soaring. That doesn't sound in any way dangerous.
I think that can be adjusted because Ardupilot already has autonomous soaring.
So does that work on slope soaring?
I'd want ground proximity somehow.
So we would it would just need to change the algorithm that the plane uses to do the soaring. Should not be that.
Yeah, but again, that's as is rubber band free flight.
Kids comment. That's a young person's comment. Piezo. God, that was years after we started. These piezo gyros would have killed for one of those when we started.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
But not to mention the small fortune that putting an helicopter together back in those days would mean,
or putting one back together.
No, I would just mean the first time. The first time. The second time, the black plastic bags, I believe they were also cheap back then.
I was lucky enough to see a K-Van Jet Ranger fly, the very first commercially produced helicopters, I think they were, and no tail gyro, nothing. It didn't fly for long, but boy, it was spectacular.
Yeah. Vic Smead had one of those, and he was very famous about those videos kicking about. He's still on the right side of 70. Yeah. Which, your viewpoint might change on which the right side of 70 is. Two sides are available. Anyway, we have definitely digressed. So with that, I think we should call this one to an end and say, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, thank you for being with us. Look after yourselves, and we'll see you again next week, hopefully with some feedback on their court case in America. In England, the council's ones. That is coming. The 21 days will be over. So look after yourselves. See you at 2100 GMT next week. Cheers all. Take care. Look after yourselves. And 2 buttons.